Hey, good to see you guys again. Such a blessing to be up here with you all this weekend. It really is. It really, really is. And I want to go ahead and mention, and try and remember to mention it again at the end. We got so many great questions that were very specific, questions about in-laws, questions about technology, et cetera, that Carol and I are just going to be setting up here on the stage after we're done this morning, if anybody wants to sit down and just kick things around with us about specific questions. So we don't have the answers by any stretch of imagination, but we're happy and would be delighted to kick things around. So speaking of Carol, Carol's got this aunt, Aunt Christy. And Aunt Christy is a large, really large, loud, unattractive, moo wearing, caring, sweet woman. She's a caution up one side and down the other. And she had a particular connection with our middle daughter, Annie. Annie loved Aunt Christy. Aunt Christy loved Annie. And we were sitting in our family room one year when Annie, who again is 25 years old now, when Annie was probably, I'll say 3, maybe she was 4, and Aunt Christy was holding her kind of up to her, and Annie was snuggled into her, and Annie just looked up at her, and we're all just kind of sitting there, and Annie looked up at her and was like, Aunt Christy, I love you. You're so fat. And to Annie, it didn't matter that Aunt Christy was large or unattractive. And what she actually meant by you're so fat was I can just pull into you and be known by you and be loved by you. And I can love you and know you as much as a 4-year-old can know anybody. And it was obviously really funny, but it's such an endearing story. It's kind of a snapshot in our family of, you know, it isn't so much what or who we are. We all long to be known and to be loved. And when we are knowing and loving to others, it is magical to them. It is magical to them. And so I want to encourage us, kind of in conclusion, to make a habit of spending time with our family, to make a habit of being loving and doing the loving things towards our family, to make a habit of knowing your family. The more that you spend time with your family, the more you will want to spend time with your family. The more that you do the loving things towards your family, the more you will love your family. The more you put effort into knowing your family, the more you'll want to know your family. And not just your children, each other as well. I also want to work in some additional encouragement. Be each other's best friends. I'm assuming that most all of you were, if not all of you were, when you stood at that altar. Don't let that slip away. Be intentional about remaining each other's best friends. Just because it's intentional doesn't mean that it's not sincere. Just because it's intentional doesn't mean that it's not real and it's not authentic. In fact, I would make the argument that in the real world, the most authentic things are intentional things. It may not seem exciting that I wake up every morning and I go to work for my family, but over the long haul, that intentional, repetitive thing is probably Carol's biggest anchor to the fact that I can count on him. He's stable. And I share that just as a snapshot of the fact that just because it's intentional doesn't mean that it's not sincere or authentic. And I think in our culture, there is so much that suggests that if it is not spontaneously organic, that somehow it's not real. And truthfully, that's not just a recent thing. The French started that in like the 1700s, but Carol said I should stay away from history. So I also want to say, as I'm talking about knowing and loving and being known and being loved by your family, I want to reemphasize how messy the whole thing is, and that I'll just steal a story that I heard once about baby eagles. If you ever see a baby eagle does not, specifically a baby bald eagle, it does not look like it's ever going to turn into a bald eagle. And so there are going to be places with your kids where you're thinking, this is not going to happen, whatever this may be. And let's just say knowing your kids. This is not going to happen very well with this one. Struggle through. Stay on the path. I've got 2 quick stories about that. Annie, again, our middle daughter, struggled with classic sort of middle child of same-gendered siblings, which is she just got very good at being quiet. There was all this noise going on both the bookends, plus both of our parents are pretty outgoing. Well, Carol's pretty outgoing. I'm annoyingly outgoing. And so she got really good and practiced at being quiet, which meant that she was uncomfortable at sharing herself, and she was uncomfortable expressing herself. And if you'd seen her at like 7 or 8 years old inside our family, you would have thought, this one's just not ever going to let herself be known. And there was no magic for how we got there. We just stayed the course. And we were unafraid, because just the process of making a habit of spending time with your family, being loving your family, knowing your family, that's sacrificial. That requires sacrifice in and of itself. There's some things that just require a little bit of extra sacrifice. And Carol and I both, we talked about the fact that we just need to try our best to pour extra into getting Annie to get comfortable with opening up. And now, especially if you're not in our family, if you were sitting there listening to the three girls talk, you might think that Annie was the louder, more aggressive one. So you might. So I'll take that as success. And then sometimes you're going to mess something up, and it's going to cause a ripple, and you're going to be afraid that you're not going to be able to overcome it. So Char's here, and when Charlie was, 7, 8, 9 years old, something like that, we'll just say right in there, she wasn't in her tweens yet, she was doing something, she got upset, I got frustrated at her for being upset, all that's normal and fine, but like a lot of guys, and especially intense guys, I can struggle with my temper a lot. I struggle with my temper a lot. And I had an apple, was eating an apple, which I do for breakfast all the time, and I just was like, Charlie, and smashed the apple up against the wall. I mean, you can just picture it, right? You're a small child, your dad's standing over you, the apple hits the wall. It's worse than me punching the wall, because if I punch the wall, my fist doesn't explode, but the apple does. And like, that was a big mistake on my part, and that stuck with Charlie for 5 or 6 months. No, I'm kidding. It stuck with her for 5 or 6 years. Am I correct, Charlie? Yes, it did. And so, like, I can say, I'm really sorry about that. You know, your dad struggles with tension, or excuse me. Yes, that too. Your dad struggles with tension, anxiety, aggression, but your dad struggles with his temper. But right there, it was such a big deal that me just apologizing was not going to take care of it. You just struggle through. You just stay in the fight, which is what I do with Charlie. Just still went after knowing her and loving her and trying to reassure her. And somebody even asked a question about, what do you do if your child says to you, hey, my spouse, has got this issue? So if your child comes to you and says, spouse has this issue. And when I read that question, I thought many things, but one of them was, Carol's heard that from Charlie because of my temper and that stretch in there. And I will also say, one of the things Carol did was, Carol didn't overly throw me under the bus. She wasn't dishonest about the fact that she didn't know that I had a little bit of issue with my temper, but she didn't overly throw me under the bus, which was helpful for me to continue to just struggle through. And so when it comes to spending time with your family and being loving your family and knowing your family and falling more deeply for all those things, it's super messy. I don't want to make it sound like that there was a straight line from 3 adult daughters back to 3 little girls who looked just like the adult versions of themselves. It was way messier than that. There wasn't a straight line. But so wonderful. And don't forget, be each other's best friends. So there's a great young life verse that I'll kind of end my discussion of family on. 1 Thessalonians 2:8. And it's Paul talking to the church in Thessalonica, and he's saying, I just want you to know, when I was with you, I loved you so much. I was delighted to share my life with you, as well as the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love you so much. I was delighted to share my life with you. And I hang on to that verse with Carol and Grace and Annie and Charlie too. I love them so much. It is a delight. It is a delight. It has been a delight to share my life with them. I want to point towards God as the husband and the father. And at the same time, it has also been a delight to share my life with them. And one of the wonderful things about being friends with your children when they get older, which by the way is messy too. I don't want to make that sound like I don't want to make that sound like I don't get in trouble with Grace. Sometimes I do. She's the oldest child. If any of you all are oldest children in here, there's always a little bit of a fight for who's really the father of the family, the father or the oldest child. And I'm trying very hard to just abdicate that. It's Grace. Except where Annie or Charlie say, don't. But it's such a delight to know I've got all of these other years in front of us where I also get to share their life. They share my life, but mostly at this point in time, it's kind of flip-flopping, and I'm sharing their life. It's a great verse. I hang on to it. It is, however, also a Young Life verse, and I want to talk for a few minutes about Young Life. I'm a product of Young Life. The first time that I came up here was in 1982, and I remember stepping out on that porch that Saturday morning. It was a weekend camp. It's not a summer camp. And we gotten in late on Friday night, so you couldn't see what the camp looked like. And stepping out on the porch of my cabin that next morning, and just how beautiful it was. It was transformative. It was transformative. In that verse, we loved you so much that we were delighted to share our lives with you as well as the gospel of Jesus Christ, is Young Life's kind of capstone verse, if you will. That's what we do with high school kids. That's what they were doing with me all the way back in 1982. That's what we do with high school kids. We build the bridge of friendship. And we do that by going to where high school kids are. And go to where high school kids are, in the school, in the lunchroom, if we can still get away with that, where we can still get away with that. And I'll just pause and say, that in and of itself has always required a lot of good salesmanship. There have been very few schools since, the 60s that were just like, sure, whatever, come on in. It's not like that's a recent thing. That's not like it's just a post-Columbine thing. And so right there's a snapshot of how much Young Life pursues high school kids. We go to where they are. We build friendships. We build a bridge of friendship. We earn the right to be heard. And then we drive the heavy equipment of the gospel of Jesus Christ across that bridge. That's what we do in Young Life. And in Young Life, all are welcome. All high school kids are welcome. And I think Young Life does a great job at ministering to whoever, as my wife likes to say, is at our elbow. Whoever's at our elbow. If God puts them in front of us, we're ministering to them. But Young Life's got to focus. And as I mentioned on Friday night, I was just trouble waiting to grow up. And of course, I went to school with a bunch of people who were just trouble waiting to grow up. Some less than me, some more than me. Young Life really does a tremendous job at focusing in on lost, fast, and disinterested high school kids. And Young Life's saying is kind of lost and disinterested kids. I stick the fast in there because before Young Life's saying became lost and disinterested kids, when people would ask me about Young Life as a Young Life leader, I would say, everybody's welcome. Church kids are welcome. Everybody's welcome. But we're going after fast kids. And I'll probably struggle in the next 10 minutes with crying as much talking about Young Life as my family because I got multiple talks to spread the family emotion across. And, but I was a fast kid. I was a fast kid from a notorious father. And I had a heart for fast kids from notorious parents. And I married a wife who's been a great partner in pursuing fast girls from notorious parents. Young Life does a great job of that. So much so that one of my favorite stories about Young Life, and we're going to fast forward to, I'm just at camp, I'm at summer camp, I'm area director of Young Life in West Tennessee. And by the way, we got several area directors in here. Matt from Bristol, Matt from Murfreesboro, Daniel from Hendersonville, right? And Will from Upper East Tennessee. So these three guys are here with you. And I'm talking about Young Life this morning because I want to point back to them and what you can do in those areas. But I was just here as an area director, summer camp. We had about 300 kids from Jackson, Tennessee. Fast, wild kids. And one of the things I was really proud about with our area was we always had slightly more guys than girls, which if you're trying to get a wild, lost high school guy to sit down and listen to you talk about Jesus Christ, talking about loving others, and verily, verily, I say unto you, it's hard. And the camps hated to see us coming because we were so out of control. But nonetheless, we were maybe not the most out of control because I was just standing on the porch of the cabin watching some of my guys play some Frisbee golf. And this other leader comes up to me and he's just like, you. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you got to do something about those guys. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? He's like, follow me, follow me. And so I followed him into the building and went over to the cabins he's specifically talking about. He's like, in there, those guys, you have to do something about those guys. And I was like, hey, dude, that's not even my cabin. Those aren't my guys. And he's like, I know. They're my guys. You got to help me do something about these guys. But somehow he got those guys there. And they were listening to him talk about Jesus Christ. And they were listening to a speaker talk about Jesus Christ very, very well. We went to where kids were. We go to where kids are. We build the bridge of friendship. We drive the heavy equipment of the gospel across that bridge. And it changes lives. So I want to tell a quick story about my wife, Carol, and a young sophomore in high school. Her name was Jennifer. And of all of the wild kids that we had seen, Jennifer was probably up there. Carol had heard the stories, and this was one of those situations, pretty dang tricky, but young life leaders face it all the time, where a parent of another child said, my heart is so broken for this Jennifer girl. Can you help? And so that's tricky. You know, you talk about sharing the gospel, and then you talk about amplifying it by having to cold call. Hey, I'm not just a Mormon, I also sell insurance. Hey, I'm not just an awkward adult, I also want to tell you about Jesus. So we were at a football game. Jennifer was a cheerleader at this game, and I was like, Carol, I'll hold, who's one of our daughters, and was it Charlie? I think it was Charlie was a baby, or was one of the daughters was a baby, a time just as all mashed potatoes. I was like, I'll hold the baby. We'll say it's Charlie since Charlie's here. I'll hold Charlie, and I'll walk her around. You go talk to Jennifer. She'd never met Jennifer before. And I share this story because it's such a powerful metaphor of what young life is. Carol's up in the stands, in the crowd, between the crowd and the field where Jennifer is, because she's standing right there at the edge of the field as a cheerleader, is several fences. And so Carol makes her way through the crowd. The game's just finished, so there's tons of crowd milling around. Makes her way through the crowd, around the obstacles. And Jennifer, when I looked up, she was just standing by herself in like the middle-ish of the field at about the 35-yard line. And that's such a picture of what we do in young life, making our way through the crowd, around the obstacles to go where high school kids are. It changes lives. It's beautiful. So you can fast forward. Obviously, Charlie's not a little baby anymore. And Carol's ministry brought Jennifer to Christ. Jennifer is, just dear adult friend of ours now. Her and her husband and their children spend July 4th with us every year. It wasn't just a straight line, much like parenting. It wasn't just a straight line from that moment to everything's better. She had some notorious parents. Oh my gosh. My dad is like, God, they're more notorious than me. Like, that's how notorious they are. And that's my dad, by the way. That's where he's competing. Who's the wildest? I also want to share a great punchline on a story of Janae Kennedy's, who is sitting up there. And so when I first talked to Janae Kennedy into being a young life leader and going out to Northside High School was wild. I mean, Northside High School was wild. The first time I walked into Northside High School, I walked right into the middle of a girl fight, which I thought I'd kind of broken up pretty well. There weren't any teachers around at the time. I thought I'd broken it up pretty well. I had one girl behind me And these were some pretty tough girls. And another girl in front of me, and I felt like I was kind of getting them calm, and one of them was hustling me, and when I didn't have my eye absolutely on her, she reached out and she yanked the other girl's earring through her ear. So, not out of her ear, through her ear. So Northside High School was wild. I said, sweet little Janae Kennedy. And just about, 12 weeks ago, something like that, Carol Lee Weaver came up to me at church. So was one of Janae's wild Northside High School girls who's gone on to be a powerful vessel of light on behalf of the gospel herself. And one of the things we say about Young Life, and my family, and I've spent all weekend talking about my family. My family's a picture of this. We are the feet, the beautiful feet that are talked about in Scripture that take the gospel out to kids. And it doesn't just transform the high school kids, it transforms the families that they don't yet have, but one day will. This family, mine, is transformed. Carol Lee Weaver's family is transformed. Jennifer and Dow Davidson's family is transformed. There are probably half a dozen of you all in this room who are the products of Young Life. It's a beautiful thing. We're delighted to share our lives with our high school friends as well as the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we do share the gospel of Jesus Christ. In this confusing modern world, man, when I go hear a talk arc at a weekend camp, or if I'm lucky enough every once in a blue moon to be an adult guest for a week-long camp, we do a powerful job of doing that. It feels like it gets trickier and trickier all the time. So I want to kind of finish up with just one more story, and it's my story. So how did I get from that cabin deck to here? And I went to Farragut High School in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was the fast son of a notorious father, and I ran with plenty of other guys and gals who were, some of them were impressively even faster. And they came after me, and they built the bridge of friendship. And here's a phrase that we will throw around sometimes too. They loved me to Jesus. Over the course of 3 or so annoying years, because I really liked my Young Life leaders. I really liked the families that I was getting exposed to around Young Life. I already knew that it sounded nice. That sounds nice, but I doubt it. That was my take on God. That sounds nice, but I doubt it. I've seen enough of other life to know that I doubt it. And there's this family that swirled around the Farragut Young Life group, and the Baileys. And Mrs. Bailey knew my family situation, and she was kind of like a team parent, and she sent her college-age son, who was a Young Life leader at another school, one day to just pick me up for club. I couldn't drive yet, and he's like, hey, in fact, it's Keith. It's funny, we do business at their house last week, but he was like, hey, and he's annoyed because his mom told him, a college student, to go pick up a high schooler. Hey, let's go. And I was like, go where, man? And he's like, to Young Life. Going to Young Life with me. I was like, what? He's like, seriously, my mom made me drive over here. We're going now. And I was like, okay, can I get ready? He's like, what do you mean get ready? You want to put on your makeup? Come on, let's go. And like, it was all that awkward. But I didn't know what else to do. My mom wasn't even there. I was watching, we were getting ready to watch Magnum P.I. That wasn't going to be a great excuse. So I went. And it was at the Bailey's house that night. And I started hanging around with the Baileys a lot. They had a son who was my age. Eventually we became, best friends in high school. And they were all about Young Life. They were an extension of Young Life. And they're a metaphor for what we do with high school kids in Young Life and how much it matters and how much it changes lives. So there were 3 boys in that family, and they were raucous. And they were rough and tumble, and they seemed very real. And the way that their dad interacted with him seemed very real. And while Mrs. Bailey seemed sweet 25% of the time, she seemed overtly scary the other 75% of the time because she had to deal with 3 raucous boys. And like the whole thing just seemed so real. Like it seemed so real. It didn't seem like any kind of put on. It couldn't be a put on. I was around them so much. So they were loving enough to be raucous with me too. And Miss Bailey made homemade chocolate chip cookies a lot. And so quite often I would come over and there would be homemade chocolate chip cookies. And she would be like, do you want a cookie? And I'm like, do you have milk? And I knew the answer to that question, which is no, they didn't drink milk. They were a family who was like, oh, milk, milk's of the devil. And now at this age, actually, it kind of is. But so right around 45 or so is when that happened. But so there was this ongoing aggressive jab joke thing between Kevin and the Baileys about no milk, no milk. There's no milk. They're like, no, but we got Gatorade. I'm like, oh, yes. I remember the Norman Rockwell painting with the chocolate chip cookies in the Gatorade. So one afternoon, I went over there. I walked in. I knew where the key was to get in. Steve wasn't there. Nobody was there. And I was a junior in high school. I walked in. There were cookies. Rolled my eyes. I walked over to the refrigerator. I opened the refrigerator. And there was a bottle of milk in there. And it had my name on it. It said, Kevin, in black marker. That's what we do in Young Life. That's what we do in Young Life. We love kids to Christ. We go where they are. We build friendships. We drive the heavy equipment of the gospel across that bridge of friendship that we've built. And you can be involved in your area. And I hope that you would be involved in your area. There are 3 substantial ways you can be involved. Number 1, you can be a volunteer leader. Wait, you say, I'm too old. No, you're not. You all look 12 to me. Well, there are 2 or 3 that don't. But most of you look 12 to me. So interestingly enough, Will doesn't somehow. Even though he's closer to it. You can be a volunteer leader, and you're not too old. Carol and I led until we were 40, which is long after we were off Young Life staff. In fact, I've got a great quick story about Charlie and how once we started having kids, it's a powerful way to share the gospel. The mess of your family is a powerful way to share the gospel. Think about my experience with the Baileys. The mess of their family really was that bridge of friendship that they used to so flesh out what I heard Steve Chesney talking about. Steve Chesney, a Young Life leader, what I heard him talking about. And we would take our guys, our high school guys, our high school girls with us on little family trips. And we took a guy named Brennan Berg, a dear friend of ours now, to the Memphis Zoo with us. Because we're a zoo family, I mentioned that. And in the Memphis Zoo, at the very front, there's this long, wishing fountain, wishing well kind of thing. It's just about this deep. It's not very deep. And as you might imagine, there's tons of pennies and dimes and quarters and nickels in it. And so me and Carol are finishing buying the tickets, and I look up, and Brennan is standing over there talking to Charlie. And Charlie is young at this point in time. She's 3. And he's trying to prevent her from just pulling all of the money out. Because as Charlie would tell you, at a young age, she knew what she wanted. So she knew what she wanted. And Charlie, if you don't mind, what was it when you were younger that you wanted to own? She wanted to own downtown. Wait, what part of downtown? No. Downtown Knoxville. She wanted to own downtown Knoxville. Dad, when I get older, can I own downtown Knoxville? I'm like, that's my girl. That's my entrepreneur right there. But so she's trying to pull pennies and quarters out, and Brendan's like, no. You don't do it that way. That's not what you do. And Carol and I kind of walk up behind them as they're having this interaction. And Brendan's like, you throw one in and you make a wish. You throw one in and you make a wish. And Charlie's like, oh, okay. And so she threw them all back in except for one of them because she wasn't producing her own, She's still going to be efficient about this. So she makes a wish. She throws it in. And then Brendan says, well, what'd you wish for? And Charlie says, I wish that I had all the pennies and dimes and quarters. So it doesn't matter how old you are. The areas need volunteer leaders, and post-college age leaders are every bit, if not more, powerful than college age leaders. Areas also need committee members. Committee members. If you have any interest in being a committee member, ask your area director about it. Don't wait to be asked. Let them know that you're interested. They feel a little bit like they're saying, hey, I'm not just a Mormon, I also sell life insurance, by asking everybody constantly to be, while you're stuck in the elevator with them. They feel like they're asking that question a lot. You can be committee members. It's a powerful, powerful way to be an impactful part of a local Young Life area. And then finally, financial support. they need financial support. These areas obviously are not producing any kind of earned income. They're not making, a bunch of T-shirts, and they need financial support. They need volunteer leaders, they need volunteer committee members, and they need financial support. And it's a beautiful, powerful thing. It really changes communities. It really changes schools. And I can also say this, since this whole weekend has been about marriage and family, as much as we have given to Young Life, and we've given a lot to Young Life in terms of years of time and lots of money, as much as we've given to Young Life, I think you could even take my salvation story out of the equation, and Young Life still given more to us just as a family. It's a powerful win-win. It's a powerful win-win. And so please keep in mind, the local area would love to have you involved. Volunteer leader, volunteer committee, financial support. And it's a powerful win-win. So with that, let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I praise you so much for these new friends and these faces that I've got to know this weekend. I praise you for the beautiful weather that we've had. I praise you for the beautiful families that I have seen this weekend. I praise you for the mothers and fathers that I've seen struggling through. I pray that you would strengthen us to put our families first in pursuit of drawing near to you through drawing near to them. I pray all these things in your Son's precious name. Amen. Hey, once again, after the announcements are done, because I'm sure there are some, here comes Matt, yes, to give announcements. After the announcements are done, me and Carol will just be sitting up here if anybody wants to come up and talk about other more specific things. So, thanks, y'all.
Hey, after this, I think everybody remembers some version of what Austin said last night about cleaning up our cabins. And so do some version of that. And, take out the trash, put the towels and the sheets up, and I think, pack your stuff up. They don't want your stuff here, so take it home. And then we're going to have the store open right after this. And then, other than that, I think we're done. We don't have any lunch here, so you have to go someplace else to eat that. So, well, what do you...
So much going on, it's pulling me along. The current's getting stronger, oh. It's way too much for me, causing anxiety. Don't know what to believe. Every time I get into my head, I know I gotta run to you instead, oh. I look to you now. All I can do is give it all to you and lay it down now. never gotta carry it around, so I shut my mouth now, so you can talk now. I don't wanna miss it. You're pulling me close for me to listen. I know, you'll never leave me wherever I go. You're all that I need. I don't wanna be too loud. I know you're gonna work it out. I don't wanna miss it. You're pulling me close for me to listen. No, I don't wanna miss it. I'm always running around. Life has me up and down. Feel like I'm losing ground, but you make the seasons turn and clarify the blood. You've overcome the world, giving up and letting go of my way, knowing that you came to seek and save me. I trust the process because you promised I can always take you at your word, and everything you're working out for my good. I shut my mouth now, so you can talk now. I don't wanna miss it. You're pulling me close for me to listen. I know, you'll never leave me wherever I go. You're all that I need. I don't wanna be too loud. I know you're gonna work it out. I don't wanna miss it. You're pulling me close for me to listen. I don't wanna miss a thing. What you wanna say to me? There's beauty in the silence. Help me find it. I don't wanna miss a thing. I don't wanna miss it. You're pulling me close for me to listen. I know, you'll never leave me wherever I go. You're all that I need. I don't wanna be too loud. I know you're gonna work it out. I don't wanna miss it. You're pulling me close for me to listen. I don't wanna listen. I don't wanna hold me close. I don't wanna miss a thing. What you wanna say to me? Say it to me. Pulling me close for me to listen. I don't. No, I don't wanna miss it. I turn my phone on, question my life, cause all I see is people's highlights. They got everything that I don't have, and their happiness, it makes me so mad. I wonder why everybody seems to have the perfect life, and nobody seems to face the challenges I do in mine. The struggle is real and now I feel I'm running out of time. Is there anybody else? Oh, well, I guess this song is just for me, the only person who is hurt, scared and wondering where I'm going, what is life, who I'm supposed to be. I wonder if there's anybody else who might agree. Oh, well, I think that I'm the only one who's hanging on by a thread and barely holding up. I try my best, but I'll admit that life is getting rough, but I'll keep moving forward, hoping it will be enough. Oh, well. Oh, well. If I don't see, well, I don't care. Oh, but if I do, I love to compare. If something goes wrong, well, I'm sorry, but if it goes right, it should have been me. I wonder if anybody feels the way that I do, or somebody tell me if they see it in the same view. I wanna be better, but it feels like it's so hard to. Is there anybody else? Oh, well, I guess this song is just for me, the only person who is hurt, scared and wondering where I'm going, what is life, who I'm supposed to be. I wonder if there's anybody else who might agree. Oh, well, I think that I'm the only one who's hanging on by a thread and barely holding up. I try my best, but I'll admit that life is getting rough, but I'll keep moving forward, hoping it will be enough. Oh, well. Oh, well. Okay, I don't really know how to do this,
this, but I think that I can get through this. I will confess to the music that no, I am not perfect, but I'm working and I'm searching for the answers and my purpose, cause I know that it'll be worth it. But how? You always hashtag blessed, I'm always hashtag stressed. My life's a mess and somehow you live in your best. I'm always tired and somehow you woke up like this. You people have the perfect life and I'm so obsessed. Hold up, what if it's not true? What if this perfect person you post to please the people is not you? What if we show the real thing? What if we felt our feelings? How about we share the hurt we have and help out with the healing? Let's cut out the comparison, axe all of the arrogance, purge all of the pride, open our eyes, take it and bury it. Let's stop only showing the highlights, take your darkness, make it shine bright. We are broken and beautiful now, I want you to know this isn't welcome to my life, yeah.
Oh, well, I think this song's for everyone who's on a journey and who needs to know it's never done. We want the world to think we're good, so we put up a front. Take off the mask, there's no point to keep on dressing up. Oh, well, I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's time to bear each other's burdens, hold each other up. So never think for a second that you're not enough, cause we are more, we are known and we are fully loved. Oh, well, we all know. You are love, you are love. Oh, well. Oh, well. Oh, well. Into the great unknown, I'll just run. Time isn't gone.